Hello everybody. Okay, today's video is going to be about doing, I gotta check my rear brakes. So this video is going to be about the rear brakes, but also about how to take the back wheel off of 85 Suzuki Intruder or any shaft drive motorcycle. Most of them are generally the same. The difference between this one and some of the newer models is this one has got drum brakes. So this video is about the drum brakes. Other ones, the newer ones, have disc brakes. So this is for video or for bikes with drum brakes and shaft drive. Okay, so there's no chain. This is a shaft drive. So your Viragos, your Intruders, anything. A lot of bikes over 1980 are shaft drive. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. A lot of the cruisers anyway. So first things first, now what I've done was I've loosened the bolts just in the interest of making this video shorter. So first thing you want to do is you want to take your brake adjuster nut off right here. So you push that forward a little bit. It's going to make a liar out of me. And put it back on too far forward. There we go. As I push that forward, I just had to move the spring. I guess the spring was resisting. You pull this nut off here. This is your brake adjuster nut. So you unscrew that all the way. Take it right off. And you slide that back as far as you can. Now, this won't go back far enough to get this rod out. So what you have to do is push your rear brake pedal. That'll bring the rod forward. Then you can push that back, and your rod should fall out. Okay, so now that you've got that out, careful you don't lose the spring. You want to pull this little thing here out of your brake lever. Put it back on there. And put your adjusting screw back on, just so you don't lose anything. Don't leave these things lying around the shop floor. If you leave these lying around the shop floor, you're going to kick them around and you're going to lose them. So put it on there, let that hang. Now you have to remove the nut off your brake. I guess the support so that this doesn't turn. So that's attached to this rod here, right behind the exhaust. So put it in position here. So if I'm not mistaken, this one is a 14mm. So there's a bolt and a nut on the back. So like I said, I've loosened them already. So slide that bolt right there. Take this rod and you can push it down out of the way, and then your brake rod will fall down with it. Again, put your nut and bolt back in the hole. That way you don't lose them. Now this one here, don't screw it all the way in because you're going to need that little bit of clearance here to get your tire off. Okay, so now you got that done. What you want to do is come around the other side of the bike. And you want to loosen off your actual nut. You gotta take the cotter pin out of there. Your brake pad on the other side might have a cotter pin as well. Make sure you check that before you pull it off. Any cotter pins you take out, replace them with the new one. Don't reuse the cotter pin because a lot of time they'll break from sitting in there for so long. So you move the axle nut here, which again I have loosened. So I'm just going to pull it off. It's a crown nut, so you'll have your cotter pin holes. Pull the washer off. Okay, and set that aside. Set it up on the seat or something, somewhere you're not going to lose it. Okay, so now that that is out. Now if you have trouble turning that nut, there's a little hole in the very end of your axle right here that you can put a screwdriver in. Good luck finding a screwdriver that won't bend, so use one that you don't care about anymore. Okay, so now that that is loose on that side, if you haven't loosened everything before like I have, obviously, these could be seized or stuck in this bushing here or in here. So you might have to use a rubber mallet. I have a soft hammer. You can tap on the nut on the other side and that should pop out. Now like I say, this has been loosened. When I first took it off, I had to get a pair of channel locks and a rag on here so I don't damage it. The rag is so I don't damage it. I had to twist it and free that up, and I had to free this up as well. So I had to twist the axle back and forth like so to get it to loosen, but I got it loose, so we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna finish pulling this out the rest of the way. It's probably not gonna be an easy job, but okay, so just keep pulling that out. Now be careful when you get to the end. That bushing is gonna fall, and keep your tire pressed to this side so it'll stay engaged in the final drive, so that it doesn't fall on you. So there's your axle, there's your spacer. I'd set that up somewhere clean. So I'm going to set mine up in my bench. Make sure you pick up your spacer. Now mine fell on the ground, there's got some dirt and stuff there now, so I'm going to have to clean that off. You don't want to get any gravel or any dirt in there when you put it back together. So, and when you put it back together, put a little bit of grease in there and a little bit of grease on the axle. Put it back in. So you set your spacer aside. Now your drum won't come off unless you pull the back tire off. Okay, because if you pull it out, it just stops there and won't come out. So you're going to put your hand here, hold it. Okay, now you want to slide your tire toward the right side of the bike. So grab a hold of it so it doesn't drop on you. And then there you go. Comes into your gear and it just drops down like that. There are other videos, one in particular on YouTube, and I'm not going to mention the name. When he took his off, he went and pulled all of the final drive apart as well. So he was taking it off, taking these bolts out. Do not do that. You will never, not say never, but you're going to have the hardest time getting all those splines back in there to get that final drive back together. It is not necessary to take all that off. Okay? Like I said, you just slide the tire to the right of the vehicle and it'll pop out of these gears in the final drive here. So now, what you got to do is you got to make sure your bike is jacked up high enough so that you can clear the fender. Okay. Now you might want to take your license plate off first before you do this so you don't bend your license plate. But now if you just roll the tire back, I'm going to angle it a little bit. It looks like it won't fit, but it will. You just got to kind of wiggle it around and maneuver it a bit and it will slide right past all your gears. It's going to get caught on your final drive gears. But like I say, if you just keep wiggling it, there you go. Slide right out. And that's your tire off your bike. Okay, now putting it back together. Now I've already done everything I needed to do when I had it apart. I just wanted to take it apart to make the video. So now I'll make a video how to put it back together. So again, now once you've got your tire out, I'll show you this really quick while I have it out. Now you just pull, bring it back over here. So your brake drum just sits in there like that once your tire comes off, and now that just slides right out. And then there's your brakes and stuff there. Okay. So I already pulled this apart and checked my brake pads and stuff like that, and everything looks good. So now I'm going to put it back together. Okay. I cleaned all this out with brake clean and stuff like that. Don't spray brake clean on your bearing, just on the outside, and wipe it out. Even just on the rag and wipe it out. That was just to get all the brake dust and stuff out of there. So put it back together. It goes back like that. Go over here for a better view. Okay, so now it'll be the same as when it came apart. You just a little bit of an angle to clear your license plate bracket. Wiggle it in there. I don't recommend doing what I just did, and I just smeared grease all over my white wall. Now we're going to wipe all that off. Make sure your rod just move over out of the way so you don't bend it. Just keep wiggling. This is why I said earlier to make sure that you don't put that nut all the way in, because you're going to need that little bit of clearance. There you go. It's clear. Okay. Now you bring it in. Turn that down a little bit like that. Make sure that rod's up out of the way. Go down in the way. Now that you're here, you just pick it up. And you guide it back on to your final drive. You take a bit of maneuvering, so make sure you got a good grip on it. It's going to be heavy. So you wiggle it on, slide it over, and make sure that there's no gap in here. Okay, so you want to slide that over. So if you watch, when I slide that over to pull it off, it just slides over and then drops down. Okay, so when you put it back on, make sure it's all the way over. Make sure it engages with the gears. Okay, if there's a gap there, then it hasn't engaged, so you're going to keep trying until you get it to engage with the gears. Okay, so once that's back on, zoom in just a little bit here. Then everything else is pretty much the reverse of installation, so you just make sure your drum is sitting close to where it's supposed to go. Okay. So you grab your axle and your spacer, and I've already pre-greased these from before, so you put your little spacer up in here, slide your axle in. Once it goes past your spacer, it should slide all the way in, because everything should be lined up with if your gears are properly engaged. Okay, my bike's turning on me. Make sure you guys still have a good view. Okay, you do. So now, instead of smashing your hand, grab your little mallet and very lightly tap that in. You don't want to smash it, because if you're just stuck on a thread or something, you'll be stripping your threads. And same thing when you hammer on if you do hammer on the inside to get that axle to come out. Make sure you put the nut back on, but not beyond the threads, like not beyond the tip of the axle. Make sure you leave about 1/8 of an inch or so out, so you're not hitting the axle or the threads, you're just hitting the nut. And you don't want to hit that really hard either, because you can still strip those threads. So that's all the way back in there. So now I come back to this side, and I'm not going to move the camera because it's self-explanatory, but you put your washer on first, then your castle nut or crown nut, whichever you want to call it. And you thread that on finger tight. Okay, and you're going to grab you're going to put that on as tight as you can, and then grab your torque wrench and torque specs. On this particular bike, the 85 Suzuki Intruder, it is between 43 foot-pounds and 69 foot-pounds. I'm going to go 55, somewhere in the middle, and then once I get down to that torque, I'm going to look on my crown nut and see if it's lined up with the hole in the axle, so I can get my cotter pin. If not, then I can tighten it a bit more to line that up. If you go right to 69, then you have to loosen it to line that up. I'd rather tighten a bit more to line it up than to loosen. So we're going to assume that I've torqued all that down, because I'll just do it after. But once you get to this stage, you take your brake shaft or your brake rod, make sure it's above this, because now you're going to put this in, and this has to be above that bolt before you put it in, otherwise you won't get it back in. So I'm going to take that nut and bolt out of there. bring this up, line this up with the hole there, put the nut back in, and the bolt back in, sorry, and then put the nut back on the back side. Actually, you know what? I do believe I have that backward. I do. Okay, so the bolt goes in from the back side. And the reason for that is because there's a hole there for a cotter pin. So you got that on, then you put your nut on. Yeah. Then take your brake rod. Take it apart again, make sure you put this thing back in the hole. Back into your brake adjusting lever there. Okay, and then you want to make sure you line up the hole so that the rod can go back in without too much trouble, because you're going to have to push your brake pedal again. Okay, so you come over here, you push your brake pedal, pull your spring back. Push your brake, lever forward, and then you fight with it until you can get it to line up with the hole and go in the hole. Which is not going to be easy because the stupid thing turns all the time. But this is where it would be handy to have an assistant if you had one, but it can be done by yourself. Okay, so there we go, that's in. And then you put your adjusting nut back on. Now what I did before I took this all apart was I measured it with a set of verniers. I measured the length of the rod that was sticking at the back of the nut, just so that I can get it as close as possible to where it was, and then I'm going to readjust it after that. But that'll get it as close as you can with it, so you don't have to mess around with it as much. Okay, once that's in, tighten this down to torque. Make sure the axle is tightened down to torque, and then you can adjust this. And that's all there is to it. So, like I say, make sure you measure this just so you can get it back to as close as possible. And make sure you reuse, or you do not reuse your cotter pins. Put in new cotter pins. If for nothing else, it's for your own safety, because if those come out and then you go hit the brakes and you don't have any brakes, well, we can guess what goes or what happens there. So that's all there is to it. That's how you take it apart. That's how you put it back together. Like I say, again, remember to put a little bit of grease on the axle, just to help us slide in and out better and reduce friction. And yeah, that's it. So I hope this video helped, and if it did, good. You know, and hopefully the other videos I have on there will help you as well. Take a look at all my other videos, and there'll be other videos on how to work on this particular bike, and some that are just on general bike stuff. So enjoy. Thanks for watching.